Friends, once again I have welcomed you in the next session of the fifth chapter, that is HTTP. So we'll move towards the HTTP. So I will go to the slides regarding the HTTP. So HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It is a protocol used mainly to access data on the World Wide Web. HTTP functions as a combination of FTP and SMTP. FTP stands for File Transfer Protocol and SMTP stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. So in this particular section we are going to discuss HTTP transactions, and after that we are going to discuss persistent versus non-persistent connections, which are mostly asked for the examinations. So HTTP uses the services of TCP on well-known port 80. So at the time of lab, when we had configured the web server, in that we had seen that the configuration file, that is httpd.conf file, in which the default port number is 80. So why this is 80? Because it is the well-known port for the web server. So we can have the web server running in a network with port number 80, but if you have the multiple web servers in the same network, then you have to change the configuration file. You have to make the changes in the port number of the configuration file. So default port number is 80. So most of the times it can be asked for the 1 mark question, that what is the default port number for HTTP. So the default port number for HTTP is 80. So in the HTTP transaction, in figure 27.12, you'll see one client and the server. The client requests to the server and the server gives the response to the client. So this is a simple HTTP transaction. So how does this request and response messages work? So that we'll see in the next slide. So in the request message, you'll find what? A request line, headers, blank line, body, which is present only in some messages. And in the response message, you'll find what? The status line, headers, a blank line, body, present only in some messages. So body is not that much compulsory. It can present or it cannot be present in the message. So the most important thing is what? The request line should be there in the request message. In the response message, the status line should be there. So why the status line is there? Because it is showing you the response in the form of whether the server has responded to your request or not. So that is there in the status line. And the headers gives you the subject details. So that is there in the request and response messages. So request and status lines. So in the request line, what you'll find? Request type, what kind of request you are going to make. After that you have to give the space, and then you have to provide the URL that which you want to be. After that you have to give the space, and then you have to mention the HTTP version. And in the status line, what you will find out? The HTTP version, then space, the status code, whether it is running, not running, successful, not successful. After that space, and then you'll have the status phrase. So that is there in the request and the status line. So there are some of the methods which are used in the request and response messages. So when you are going to be there in the final year, you have the subject called as web technology, in which we are going to see all these request and response messages regarding the web. So there are some of the famous methods that we can discuss. In that, in the left part you will find out the methods, and in the right part you will have the actions. So GET, what it does? Request a document from the server. So when a client wants a specific document from the server, so it gives a get request to the server. Then head action is what? Request information about the document but not the document itself. So here only the header part for the document is mentioned, not the entire document is mentioned over there. Then the post method is there. So post method is does what? Sends some information from the client to the server. So when server responds to the client, then it is using the post method. So that is the information from the server to the client side. After that we have the put method, in which sends a document from the server to the client. So in the post method, what we are sending? Only the information, but the actual method we are sending by the put method. So put method does what? It retrieves the client the requested page or the document. After that we will have trace, in which it does what? Echoes the incoming request. It does what? It echoes, means doubles the incoming request. Then we will have connect, which is reserved, an option that inquires about available options. So these are the famous methods in which you must have to go through: get, post, put and head, which are very important method used in the request and response messages. Then in 27.2 we have some of the status codes. So in that status codes we'll discuss these codes one by one. In that, first code is 100, phrase is continue, and description here it is mentioned as the initial part of the message has been received and the client may continue with the request. So the next code is 101, that is what? Switching. The server is complying with the client request to switch protocols defined in the upgrade header. Means what? Switching in between the protocols. So if we are using one protocol and the server wants to switch to another protocol, or sorry, not server, the client wants to switch in between the protocols, then it requests to the server and the server does the switching. After that we have the success. In that there are some of the codes used for the success. First is used as the informational, and the second these codes are used for the success. So when 200 is there, phrase is okay, the request is successful. When 201 is there, phrase is created, a new URL is created. Page code is 202, the phrase is accepted, the request is accepted, but it is not immediately acted upon. Means what? It is just accepted but it has been not used. After that we have 204, which phrase is having no content, and in the description there is no content in the body. So when the content is not present in the body, then we are using the code number 204. So the codes from 200 to 204, these are used as the success codes. And then after that some of the code used for the redirection. So in that 301, 2 and 4, in which moved permanently, moved temporarily, not modified, and in the description the requested URL is no longer used by the server. Means what? Moved permanently. So some of the times what happens, if some of the URL is there present there and some work is going on there, then what happens? That site is down, and at that time when we are putting the URL, then we are not getting the particular site. So the site is under maintenance, or like that messages we are going to get, or some of the times what happens if the 1 year subscription expires regarding a particular client, then that particular site has been removed, so that we are not getting the longer site about that particular URL. Then we'll have 302. So some of the URLs, those are moved temporarily. Then 304, not modified, the document has not modified. So some of the times, as we had the discussion about the static and the dynamic documents in the www section, so in that some of the documents which are static, means what, those are fixed, we cannot make the changes. In that case we are using this code, that is 304. Then we'll have some client errors. In that 400, that is what, the bad request. 401, unauthorized. 403, forbidden. 404, the document is not found. And this error you can find out most of the times, that is what, error 404, that is what, not found. Means what, if the internet connection is there, then you are putting the URL in the browser, but you are not getting the access, the document is not found. 405, method not allowed. 406, not acceptable. So these are the client errors. Means what, at the client side some problems are there. So problems are regarding what, your internet connection. So no not major problems are there at the client side. The internet connectivity is the major problem. Some of the times what happens, your firewall is on, and there are some rules embedded with the firewall. So what happens, the firewall blocks most of the requests, those are going outside your network. So at that time what happens, the firewall blocks these requests, and they are giving you such kind of messages. Then server error. In the server error we will find mostly 3 codes. 500, internal server error. So in that case, if there is an error, then the server cache or at the server side the maintenance is there, then we are getting such type of error, 500. Then if the code is 501, not implemented, means what, the action requested cannot be performed. So whatever the things we are trying, those things are not performing. At the time 501 error is there. Then 503, service unavailable. So this occurs most of the times when particular service is down. At that time we will get the error code as 503. So these are some of the error codes regarding the server error. So you must go through the client errors and the server errors. So most of the times these kinds of errors can be used for the examination. So header format consists of the header name, space, and followed by the header value. So this is the header format. Then general headers used in that, first header is cache control, which description is specify the information about caching. Then connection shows whether the connection should be closed or not. Date shows the current date. MIME is it shows the version used. Then upgrade specifies the preferred communication protocol. So which protocol is used, it is defined by the header upgrade. So there are some of the request headers. In that, first header is accept, shows the medium format the client can accept. So what is the medium that has been there in between the client and the server, that can be specified by the header accept. Then we will have accept character set, shows the character set the client can handle. So we'll have the various character set formats like what, Unicode and all these things. So for example, you can consider Unicode. So this is one of the character set format that is used in between the client and the server. Then we'll have accept encoding, shows the encoding scheme the client can handle. So most of the times what happens, for the security purpose, the encryption and the decryption is used in between the client and the server. At that time, for the security reason, we are mentioning the encoding and the decoding schemes. After that, you will have accept language, shows the language the client can accept. Authorization is regarding the permissions the client has. From shows the email address of the user. Host shows the host and the port number of the server. If modified, since sends the document if newer than specified date. So these are some of the headers and the descriptions. So user agent identifies the client program. After that, we'll have the response headers. In the response headers, accept range, age, public, retry after, server. These are some of the headers. So accept range does what? Shows if server accepts the range requested by the client. So if the client server accepts the range specified by the client, then we are using accept range. Age shows the age of the document. Public shows the supported list of method. Then retry after specifies the date after which the server is available, and the server shows the server name and the version number. So in the entity headers, we'll have the following headers. In that, allow header is most of the times used. List valid methods that can be used with a URL. Then content encoding, content language, content length, content range, and content type specifies the medium type, the range of the document, length of the document, specifies the language and the encoding scheme. So after that, flag is there, which gives an entity, it's not flag, it's e tag, gives an entity tag. Then expires gives the expiry date, last modified, and location about the created or moved document. So these are some of the entity headers used. So in figure 27.1, we'll have the example. In this example, it retrieves a document. We use the get method to retrieve an image with the path user bin image1. The request line shows the get method, the URL, and the HTTP version 1.1. The header has two lines that shows that the client can accept image in GIF or JPG format. The request does not have a body. The response message contains the status line and 4 lines of the header. The header lines defines the data, server, MIME version, and length of the document. The body of the document follows the header. Please refer this figure. In this, we'll have the client and the server. The client use the get method. In that get, it specifies the path from where the server has to accept the image. So image should be accepted in the form of GIF or JPG format. The server accepts the image, and after that, the server specifies the protocol used for the communication, then version number, and the status of the image, whether it has been uploaded on the server or not. So the best example of this is what? There are many competitive exams in which you have to fill your registration form, and in that you have to upload your image, that is photo, and the signature. At that time you are requesting as the client, and the server is putting you some of the restrictions that the image size should be that much resolution should be there, and if it is in that limitation, then and then only the server accepts the image. So that is the example you can consider. So in the figure 27.2, the same example is there. So in that we are using the post method, in which post method client uses the post method in which CGI bin doc.pl HTTP version, that is what the server is taking the images from the client side, and the server gives the response to the client whether the image has been received or not. Then in the third example, we'll have the HTTP uses ASCII characters. A client can directly connect to a server using telnet as the remote login, and in that we are using some of the examples. So these things you already did the practical sessions. So telnet www.mhhe.com, and the port number has been specified. So we had specified what in the practical sessions, the IP address of the another machine, and the another machine's entire drive has been shared with us. So that is the best example that we did in the practical sessions. And finally, what has been concluded, HTTP version 1.1 specifies a persistent connection by default. So persistent, its meaning is what? The consistent means what? Fixed. And non-persistent means what? Consistency is not there, it's not fixed. So that is overall about this HTTP. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day. Thank you.